Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Philip Podcast. I am really grateful for this conversation that is about to happen, and to you, it's already happened. I have in the studio here again Melissa DeLuca, and we are going to go through her story one more time, but this time from a little bit of a different perspective. And this perspective is being driven by some of the learnings that her and I have had over the last 6 or 8 months about ego and studying the book A Course in Miracles, and also just some things in life that have happened that have opened our eyes to what we both feel is probably a better way to live and connect with people and just be filled with more love. So here we are today, and I want to dive right into your story, Melissa, again. And
Sure.
just tell us like where you were born, where you grew up, what that was like for you.
Yeah, and before I do that, I do want to acknowledge like we had a good chuckle before Richard and I jumped on here because I was reflecting on my first recording about my story, and it was just that it's a story, right? And I was in my head, I wasn't in my heart, and I was trying to put together this persona or this image or this external face that would make you want to listen to this or like me or be accepted or whatever the heck was motivating me that day. And being authentic is important, and being real is important. And I felt like I was largely that, and I wasn't. And so I wasn't really honoring that authenticity, that value that's important to me about just being authentically who I am, the good, the bad, and the ugly a little more. Yeah, it's really just listening to my soul and speaking my truth in all situations. And I really felt like the first time, Richard, you and I did this, like take one, I wasn't honoring that as fully as I feel like I want to and I need to. And so, it's less about the story. I feel like it's more about the journey. I feel like it's
Mhm.
more about the learnings and the growth and the perspectives, and we all learn and grow every day. And yeah, our formative years are that. They're formative. Where we grew up contributes to that. Our families, our friends, our mentors, our coaches, our life experiences, the good and the bad, and like all of that shapes us. And I've been really reflecting on how have I really, like, I've embraced a lot of that, but then as I'm getting older, like that old adage, like maybe it's about unlearning all the things you thought you knew or learned to be who you really are, and being able to connect to source, really to God, to that authenticity, that spirit, to that knowing of to our core who we are and why that matters. So yeah, my journey is my journey. Like I listened to a super powerful story recently, and this person is just such a being of light, and he kind of grabs you right out the gate with his story. And you know I don't really have that, and that's okay. Like everybody's journey and story and growth is their unique to their own. And yeah, so where I grew up in Appalachia, you
Okay,
know?
one sec before you start diving into that. That's a couple of things. First of
Sure.
all, how do you know you don't have it?
That's true.
And then the other one, something really interesting that you said. You said it's more about the journey and not the story. What's the difference between a journey and a story to you?
I feel the story is like, I feel like the journey, let me go back. I feel like the journey is active. You're in it. It's you. It's first person. It's live. Right? I feel the story is the wrapper that we put around it, like the bow or the lens that we want people to watch us through or learn about us through. It's that vantage point, that mask that we put on that, put our best foot forward or whatever it is or whatever the motivation is. So I feel like journey is a do with and an active, and it's like me in it now live. I feel story is that it's story, and even though it's my biography, right? My journey, it's told from my perspective, it still feel like there's still that element of story because, the past belongs to God. And what we remember we remember it selectively. We remember it with a bias. We remember it through a lens that was real for us at that point in time. But you know what? At this point in time, at 55 years on the planet, and I look back and I think about my story, yeah, I don't know. It just feels different to me. It feels different. One feels active, one feels like it's outside in. Does
So
that make sense?
I think so. I think so. So my mind is going, I wonder if it's possible for the story to meet the journey. And when we get there, are we seeing things as they really are? And that true authenticity. In some sacred texts that I've read, it talks about how heaven will be a place where people see things as they really are. And it just will be that way. So it's interesting that you framed it that way and brought it up. Thank you for answering that question.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's a different perspective. It's my perspective at this moment in time as I'm sitting here talking to you. You know, there may be people who, you know, it's all words, it's all labels, it's the vernacular. You know, some people have very compelling stories, and they are their stories, and their story is their journey. You know, like the two are one. You know, where I'm sitting today, the word story just has a different meaning to me. And so that's, you know, a little bit behind my perspective, right? It's a label. It's a choice. It's a label and it's a choice.
A meaning that you've made with some potential motivations behind it.
Yeah.
Instead of just being you. Yeah.
The first time we did this.
Well, you know, I do make people nervous when they come in the studio, and so just kidding.
Richard, I don't think you.
I think it's the recording part. It's not me.
You have a very grounding, centering aura and presence about you, and I appreciate your questions. You know, and I feel like for the sake of this recording, like you had asked me, like, Melissa, is there a little bit of ego behind wanting to redo this because you wanted to drop the ego, you know? And I was like, God, maybe, yeah. I'm sure there is an element of that. You know, as human beings or spiritual beings having a human experience, like, can we really ever drop ego 100% of the time? Probably not. You know, probably not. And the more I walk through life, the more I realize it's more about the connection, the purpose, the learning, how I can help you and you can help me. It's that meaning. It's that
it's a we.
Yeah, it's a we. It's that intention. It's that purposefulness about being in communion with people we care about most, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a we and a with.
It's a we and a with.
One of the things that my friend, or our friend Andrew, and fellow coach has taught me is like the perspective shift from thinking about it's happening to me to it's happening for me. And months ago, I may have shared this with you. I think the next level is it's happening with me.
Yeah.
Right? It's a we together, and so, and that's the creative energy. So instead of just the shift of this is all like it's all about me, it becomes a connection level thing, which is what you're describing.
Yeah, 100%. That just gave me chills, Richard. I think, you know, I think we need to think about the T-shirt and the bumper sticker of that. It's about the we and the with. I don't know, there's something there to that could be fun for sure.
I think you're right, and I also wonder too with this one, until you kind of go through that process where you realize it doesn't really mean anything to you. Yeah, it's kind of like we with what are you talking about, Richard or Melissa? Yeah. But when you consider it and you consider your life and consider like the ego structure and what it's done and how it's built a little bit of a facade for you, and or you've used it to do that, and that stuff's not actual reality. It's not things as they are. Then until you've done that work, you don't really understand the importance of the we with concept. At least I don't think I would have a couple of years ago. I think I was too wrapped up in life, you know, it's just shifting that little perspective and trying to survive, which is another barrier too, is learning to conquer that survival mechanism that we all have.
Yeah, that need for survival, for safety.
Yeah, for safety.
And you know, and I feel like the ego plays a part in that too.
Yeah.
Whether it's main character or indirectly, there is this element of sometimes don't let people really see, let people behind the curtain, like the Wizard of Oz. Wicked is so big right now, right? It's crazy. But like when you really see the inner workings or the raw and the real, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I hear little people, and I think that's beautiful.
I think it's our neighbors. I'm in
Yeah,
my home office today, so.
that's amazing. I love hearing little people. And anyway, they're commenting on the truth, right? So we'll just honor. And Willow's barking on the truth. Apparently, we're onto something right now, Richard.
Yeah, Willow only barks when things are true.
Barking on the truth.
Or somebody's at the door. That too, right?
But not really. No one's at the door right now. Oh my gosh. But anyway, I don't know where we were, but we were talking about how, ego, how ego can play a role in or perceived role of keeping us safe, perceived to be safe, right?
Yeah.
If I look 100%. A certain way, if I look a certain way, or I talk a certain way, or I present myself a certain way,
or if I have so much money, then I'll be okay. Or if
I've achieved this, or I've
achieved these goals, then I'll be something.
Yeah. And then then it means something. Really?
And guess how many people, when they've achieved that goal, feel fulfilled, totally fulfilled? Very few. Unless they've already done that fulfillment part already.
Yeah.
And then the goal becomes about living in that place of the journey instead of that place of achievement, that place of I have to have this before.
Yeah. Going. Like I have to be busy. I have to be the hustle. I have to accomplish this. Yeah. Achieve this, master this, and it's important to continue to grow and learn. But I feel like the motivation and the energy behind it does shift over time. The more you do the inner work, the more you do your healing, the more you do life with a perspective of with and we.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And there's a lot, there's a myriad of factors that contribute or don't contribute to that. And some of them are external factors that are within our control, and being like nutrition and exercise, because they affect how we feel and they allow us to do that deeper work and see things rather than being very reactionary because I don't feel well or I don't whatever. So that self-care is really important in this personal growth trajectory as well. I have found, I know I've learned a lot better which foods are really good for me to be clear. And so when I coach and when I'm working with people, there's a state of flow. And the funny thing about that is I'll go long periods of time and do really well at it and then feel like, oh, I'm just fine. And so then I can have some of those, like a guilty pleasure type food and then that night I'm like, oh yeah, there's the reminder. This is why I don't do that, because it's not that I'm sick or anything. It's just that I'm not mentally as clear as I became used to feeling.
Yeah,
and so that all impacts as well with ego and the different types of things that we do or excuses we make in life.
Yeah. And I have much saying that I picked up along the way, and I can't really credit it to one particular person or teaching or reading. To your point, like once you become aware, you can't become unaware, right? So when you know like what foods and choices you make with your physical health that support you and what work for you. Yeah, once you're aware of that, you cannot be unaware of it. And even though in the moment you may choose to make a different choice, right? Have that cheat day, right? Yeah, but then that, that evening or that next day, you're reminded about why not, or why, what else could you have chosen in that?
Yeah. Or you can tap it down so you feel like you don't remember, but you always kind of know.
Yeah. You try to, yes. Our brains are super powerful and trying to help us do that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Awareness is our superpower without a doubt, because that's the place where you can change the world. And the world is actually your world. It's your perception. And just kind of drawn us into this conversation today is reframing that perception that you gave last time, which we haven't done yet. We might have to do another one because this
I mean,
conversation's too rich maybe at this point to add something
I
else in.
I agree, and it's interesting, right? Because again, in the spirit of transparency, or the people that are watching this, I shared with Richard, I'm like, I'm leaning into being uncomfortable with this because normally I like to be prepared and kind of know what points I want to make or things I want to share. And I told Richard, I'm like, I intentionally didn't do that because I'm leaning into just this moment and being here.
Mm.
And we laughed. I'm like, I'm not sure what's going to come out or where this conversation is going to take us. And, and wherever it's meant to go is where it's meant to be. And, right now it's perfect. It's perfect. And, what keeps coming up in my brain when we're talking about this journey, right? Like, where does the journey begin and where does the journey end? And does it ever really have an end? Yeah, for me, growing up, yeah, those formative years were beautiful and they were tough. And that's not unlike most people, right? If you look at any moment in time, there's always the beautiful and then there's the not. With every positive perspective, there is an equal darker or struggle or pain or triumph, an overcoming. There's multiple facets to all those experiences that have made us who we are, and where we choose to look and how we choose to take that and leverage it and use it for our growth is, again, up to us. We talk about the power of mindset, right? There's people that walk through the world with glasses empty or half
Mm.
empty or
Mm.
pessimistic or a victim mindset. And there are people that walk through life with a love mindset or a growth mindset or like, what I went through was tough and it shaped me. It honed me. It strengthened me. Because I think back, on life, and the times where I've grown the most is when it was the most difficult. Like, it was a dark, deep season for me personally. And that's where I can look back and, like, those are the moments in time where I feel like I've grown the most. Like, those moments either kicked me into gear to make some significant changes, or it made me feel like I hit my personal rock bottom, with that sense of despair and loneliness and hopelessness.
Melissa, do you feel like you could share one of those
Darker
dark,
times?
yeah, with
Yeah.
us just to help us give a little bit of
Yeah.
content around
Sure.
what context? Yeah.
Sure. And this happened, this is probably 9 years ago now, 8, 9 years ago. And I was a person that largely identified with my career, my role in life, what I achieved, my title, my scope of my job, the complexity of my job, the company that I work for, the income that I made, the lifestyle I got to live. Like, I got lost in that. Those things mattered to me. I kept, there was a strong drive to achieve, and I have a strong bias for action. That hasn't changed. I still have a strong bias for action. And so, taking me at that point in time with this, I have to achieve, I have to accomplish, I have to earn, half a million plus dollars half a million plus dollars a year and make more money, achieve more. It was just the more, more busy, more of this, more. Anyway, you get the gist. So I was at a
Mm.
pretty a global technology company, and I had the responsibility for a really substantial organization of around 6,000 people, and we had a change in leadership and an exiting senior vice president and an incoming senior vice president. And those two leaders couldn't be more different. And it's not unusual when leaders come in that they want to build their own core team. And I was the senior most human resource person at that time. And so I was affiliated with the outgoing person, and I needed to kind of straddle both worlds while this new person was onboarding, building their team. And I wanted to do a good job. I wanted to stay. I wanted to contribute in a meaningful way. And I was being asked to go against my values, those things that are most important to me, and being high integrity, and transparency, and a level of transparency and being transparent in business is important to me. And I was being asked to, kind of stand up and misrepresent kind of some key decisions that were happening. And I was kind of not put out to dry, but kind of, I became the firing target versus the new incoming leader. And so, there was just oil and water, this new leader and I. We didn't see eye to eye. We had different philosophies on how to treat and manage and work with people. We had different risk tolerance profiles. We had different communications that we could not have been more different. And that's okay. But again, me at that point in time that I highly identified with my job, I missed opportunities to handle some things very differently. And as a result, I made some choices, and some people talk about telling the emperor that they don't have clothes on, or speaking truth to power. And I chose to do that, which I still do to this day. But how I did it, when I did it, and the nature with which I did it, was wrong. And it cost me that job. I wasn't overtly fired. However, in that instant, that incoming leader was like, Melissa's not on the team. She's not on the bus. She's not in the boat, right? I don't want her as my senior most HR person. It just, the trust was broken. The confidence was broken. It was broken both ways, truthfully. It was not something at the
sounds
time,
like it already had been broken on your side before you.
Yeah, 100%. And then I just kind of I put the stamp on it by choosing to,
reciprocate, essentially.
Speak truth to power and kind of give feedback in a way and in a manner that was just not productive. And so, was that the only reason? No. Like you said, the relationship was on faulty ground to begin with. And so, but again, here I am. I largely identify with my job. It's who I am, right? I was emphatic, who am I without this? Who am I without this? And I was physically burnt out, emotionally burnt out. I had been traveling a ton. I didn't have my grounding and my footing and my North Star. I didn't have all the tools at my disposal that I have today. And I felt very unhinged, unmoored, and lost. Yeah. And I made choices in those moments that weren't healthy for me. I numbed that pain with a lot of alcohol. I numbed my pain with doing more, being more busy, digging in, had to be perfect, had to achieve. It upped my coping mechanisms that were unhealthy, and it just made the situation that much worse. And I took that dark time to look for my path, look for the light, look for what I'd lost, where I'm at, and just do that, start doing more. I had been doing my inner work, as I laugh when I hear myself say that now. And it really helped me, launch me to do some broader, deeper, bigger inner work, because I didn't know who I was. I lost who I was. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know where I was going to live. I didn't know what I was going to, it was such an upheaval for me that I could not take an honest look at it. Right. You know what I mean? When you're that dark and you're that under, it can only be, sorry.
Keep going.
It can only be the light that pulls you out. And I was looking for the light, and the light was there all along. I just had gone blind to it. I didn't see it. I didn't hear it. I didn't feel it. I didn't know it. And I'm just so grateful for that time, because I'm here now.
Yeah.
With that learning, with that growth, with that insight, with this calling, with this purpose to help other people who are lost on their path, or lost in their journey, right? That so maybe also who so identify with this need to be and achieve and do. All that's good. When you have that drive, And I always like to caution, right? Like having goals and drives and ambitions and wants, that's healthy. It's when it goes beyond that tipping point, right? Where that sense of who you are, what you value, when, I mean, key relationships were lost or broken, I didn't have them. When I looked at the 360 view at that moment in time, there wasn't a lot that I was proud of or hopeful for, could say that felt like it grounded me, like could help me. I feel like I'm looking around like, ooh, okay, here we are, So yeah, that was that dark time. And I'm very grateful for it. Because I said we keep getting, like, I forget again, that an adage I picked up, like, we keep getting the lessons until we get the blessings, right?
Mhm.
We keep getting put into
Mhm.
these situations where we keep making these same choices over and over again. And we're wondering why we're not seeing different results. And then have moments that are deep and big and personal that create that perfect opportunity to grow and to learn and be like, now I get it. I get it. And it's like, okay, on to the next learning, right?
Mhm.
To the next learning. And, it's just, yeah. And again, I've gone through just a very recent experience 6 months ago, just in my personal relationships. Similarly, kind of brought me down to my knees, to my core, like ripped me open to the point where I'm like, I have to look at this and I
Mhm.
have to look at this differently. Like, what are you teaching me? Like, what am I meant to learn? And it's hard to step into that when you are in pain, right? It's hard to step into that when you're in your shame spiral or your guilt spiral. It's hard to do that when the emotions are right here. Sometimes you just have to get back into your zone of tolerance, like feel the feels, let the emotions do what they
Mhm.
do. Feel the pain, feel the anger, feel the grief, feel the feels. Live
Mhm.
life, and then just know through that there is the learning, right? There is the blessing through that
Yeah.
lesson, right? And so, yeah, it's fascinating how life works like that. When we allow ourselves to step into those spaces of just, I'm raw, God, I'm here. Like, why am I here? I'm here again. Really? Why? What? Like, help me see. Help me understand. Help me to be differently, choose differently, live differently. I want to be, I like move away from energy. Like, I don't want that ever again as a really strong motivator. However, at the same time, like you and I started talking about in the beginning of our talk today, like this notion of creation energy, right? Move toward energy. Making that shift is important,
Mhm.
right? And I feel like move away from energy is when you're hanging out in negative negative emotion land, whether it's shame, guilt,
Mhm.
anger, fear. Like if you're hanging out there, that is negative energy. Move away from energy, right? But at some point, I'd all like to believe, and we're all capable of doing that, is to making that shift to in perspective to, okay, what can I create? Where
Yeah.
do I want to go now with this experience, with this knowledge, with this perspective, with this lens, with having healed or let go of those things that are no longer here, are no longer serving me? Now what? And that's
Mm.
exciting. It can be uncomfortably exciting.
Yeah.
Okay. So hopefully that helps to give some perspective on the dark time, or
I
a dark time, or a dark period.
I think it's beautiful how you described it, and because essentially what I heard is you don't know the light or how much you're grateful for the light until you've experienced the dark, and so they almost work together to create that powerful transformation within you. And in listening to your story and just a couple of other people who've been close, who are me, and some things that they've been going through recently, I just keep reflecting back, and I really wonder if just how you delineated between story and journey at the start, that if the story that we make up about something that isn't quite true, it isn't actually how it is about something or someone or what they mean to me or what, my career, my job, the person I'm married to or dating or whoever, right? If it doesn't quite line up, that a lot of that suffering afterwards is reconciling those falsehoods with what is real. And that's what's painful, is because you're realizing that the story that you've told yourself for that time that you become attached to and that you love, right? You love that story or that perception of that person. It just isn't true. It's a fantasy that you've made up to a
Yeah.
point. Yeah.
Yeah. We are meaning making
Yeah.
machines. I think we shared this
We are.
last time, right? We can take two bits of information and put it together and come up with 4,000 different ways to look at it or talk about it or spin it or tell it. And, a lot of times, it is to protect an image or an ideal or a perspective of someone or something or a situation, or to keep us safe.
We think it keeps us safe.
Yeah.
Like pushing the suffering off, and you're actually causing more of it later.
Right, you're
Yeah.
delaying you're delaying the lesson.
Yeah. Because I really believe, and yes, I'm only 46 years old, and there are many older and likely wiser than I am, but I believe that everything, all the truth eventually is revealed for what it really is. And so, the one thing to honor you wanting to do this again is to do that a little bit quicker, and for yourself to tell the story without the story, or tell the journey without the story.
Yeah.
And I think when we have that desire, it makes navigating life and navigating those changes and those false perceptions or whatever it might be just a little bit easier, because I think that's the definition of what humility really is: being willing to see things for what they really are.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
also, yes, seeing the truth of the situation and owning it, like being
Yeah.
at cause to, like, when we
Yeah.
say that, we're like, what did I do or didn't I do that has contributed to this situation to where I'm at right now? Right. And,
Yeah. I'm
we
not
make
sure.
we make excuses for people, right? We
And for ourselves. Yeah.
and
For
ourselves.
people, including ourselves.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that you can see things as they really are without owning it. Like I'm not. I think that those are necessary.
Without going inward, you mean?
Yeah, yeah.
You just
Or just total ownership is, I think, a requirement. Ownership of what's happening, a requirement to see what's real. I believe it is, and if yeah, I'm certainly open to having that thought challenged. But I believe that it's part of the requirement, because if you're not willing to own where you're at and what's going on and what's real, then you're not actually like, I think they're connected and both needed for the other to exist.
And even in those times where we go inward, being able to ask ourselves and ask God, ask us for, like, what am I not seeing, or how can I see this
Mm-hmm.
situation differently? Like,
Yeah.
I believe I'm right. I believe this is true, but even challenge that thought. Like, is it really? And how do I know? Right. And that's where I think, that inward that sense of peace that comes from really knowing the truth, that sense of peace that comes from making a tough decision, right? That sense of peace that comes from letting go of
Hmm.
a toxic work environment, a toxic mindset, a toxic relationship, whatever it is, that sense of peace
I'll
for
add
me.
one more to that, is the sense of peace from doing that and then trusting what's to come,
Yeah.
rather than trying to control the outcome.
Yes.
And that's a challenge. It's a big challenge in life and stuff. Am I perfect at it? No. But am I way better at it than I used to be? Absolutely. And acknowledge that. Proud of the learning along the way. Grateful for the dark times, like you so eloquently taught us.
That's right. You said something
Melissa, I
like true.
has do
Yeah. Are we
you,
at time?
we are. Yeah, I hesitate to cut this off. Again, we're just gonna have to do more, and it's a good thing.
That is a good thing. And I just want to say thank you. I realize this is extra time out of your day. And I have to say, like, exiting this conversation compared to how we exited the last conversation, it has a total different feel for me. I don't know if it has a different feel for you, but thank you for allowing me the chance to just kind of do a do-over, right? Because this feels better. This feels right.
I will definitely honor your gratitude and tell you that it's been it's just awesome. I love doing this. I love hearing your story, and thanks for the opportunity. So everyone who's listening, really grateful for you being with us today, and really grateful for Melissa getting authentic and raw and diving into some concepts that I think are really powerful concepts that we often forget about because we get so wrapped up into ourselves and into our story. And so just a gentle encouragement for you to just take a step back and acknowledge yourself and how amazing you are, and that it's by falling in love with the process, and the process being the journey, that we can have that fulfillment and have that sense of peace that we're looking for.